Late bloomers don't lose. Here's why they win in the end. Napoleon Hill. What if everything you've been told about timing is wrong? What if being late doesn't mean losing, but actually means you're right on time for your time? In a world obsessed with early achievement, speed, and overnight success, we've turned life into a race. And if you're not ahead by 25, married by 30, or rich by 35, you're told you're behind. But that's not just misleading, it's destructive. Because some of the greatest minds, creators, builders, and thinkers in history were late bloomers. And they didn't just succeed, they endured, they transformed, they won in a way few ever do. Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, once said, "Patience, persistence, and perspiration make an unbeatable combination for success." But what he didn't always say outright yet wove into his philosophy is this: timing doesn't define destiny. Read that again. The world's timeline is not your timeline. And the truth is, late bloomers develop something early risers often don't: depth. While the world rushes into shallow waters, late bloomers are forced to dig. And that digging, that inner work, that slow and often painful process, creates roots so deep that when growth finally comes, it's unstoppable.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's be real. Our culture worships youth. It glorifies fast starts, child prodigies, teenage millionaires, early accolades. But here's the hidden cost. When you peak too early, when you rise before you're ready, you often collapse under the weight of success. You grow wide before you grow deep. And when the storms of life come, as they always do, you don't have the foundation to stand. But late bloomers, we're forged in the fire of waiting. We know what it means to be overlooked, underestimated, and ignored. And because of that, we learn something the fast trackers rarely do. We learn how to build ourselves when no one's watching. Pause and ask yourself, who would I be if I stopped comparing my timeline to everyone else's? What if your delay isn't a detour, it's your design? What if life isn't about how quickly you arrive, but how powerfully you grow? Think of some of the greatest late bloomers in history. Colonel Sanders didn't franchise KFC until his 60s. Vera Wang entered fashion in her 40s. But Ray Kroc didn't build McDonald's into a global empire until he was 52. These weren't accidents. They weren't flukes. These people spent years, decades learning, failing, observing, refining. They were becoming. So when their moment came, they didn't just show up, they dominated. And what made the difference? They weren't merely older. They were ready. EA. There's an invisible benefit to blooming late. While others are chasing applause, you're building endurance. While others are performing for attention, you're developing authenticity. And here's the paradox: your delay becomes your advantage. Because in the silence, in the obscurity, in the long stretches of unseen effort, you gain what fast success can't offer: wisdom. And wisdom doesn't fade. It compounds, it multiplies. It carries you when motivation runs dry. It keeps you grounded when recognition finally comes. But it gets even deeper. When you bloom late, you often bloom truer. You're not driven by proving something to others, you're led by discovering something in yourself. You're not chasing status, you're living out substance. And that difference is everything. Because when your success is rooted in inner alignment, it doesn't just impress, it impacts, it lasts, it changes people, It leaves a legacy. Let me ask you something personal. What if your greatest strength is the very thing you've been ashamed of your timing? Society tells you you're behind, but maybe you're exactly where you need to be. Maybe your delay is really a divine setup. That maybe nature has been preparing you for a kind of greatness that can't be rushed. There's a principle in Hill's philosophy that few people talk about: the power of invisible growth. He speaks about definiteness of purpose. But how do you find purpose? You don't stumble on it in a weekend seminar. You emerge into it through time, trial, and self-confrontation. And that's the journey late bloomers are forced to take. When the world moves on without you, you start asking deeper questions. What am I here for? What truly matters to me? What legacy do I want to leave? It's in the quiet seasons that we meet the version of ourselves that fame and fortune could never introduce us to. So if you feel like you've started late, stop looking at the clock. Look inward, because while others are sprinting, you're being sculpted. While others are trending, you're transforming. And you'll find that when your moment comes, and it will come, it won't be a flash. It'll be a force. Because you didn't just rise, you became. The furnace of obscurity. Why being overlooked builds the foundations of power. Obscurity isn't failure. It's a furnace. It burns away the illusions. It strips you of the need to perform. It confronts you with the question no applause can answer: who am I when no one is watching? For late bloomers, this is where the real formation happens, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. While others chase validation, you sit with the silence. While others collect titles, you collect truths. And at first, it feels like punishment. It feels like you're being left behind. But in time, you'll realize you were actually being forged. We live in a culture that equates visibility with value. That if you're not seen, you're not significant. But that's a lie. In fact, the most important growth often happens unseen. Think of a seed buried deep in the soil. For weeks, months, maybe even years, there's no sign of life above the ground. But underground, roots are reaching. The structure is forming. The foundation is being built. And then, one day, with no warning, it breaks through, and what seems like overnight success was actually a long, invisible process. That's what happens to people who bloom late. The world sees a sudden rise. But you know better. You've lived the years beneath the surface. Napoleon Hill understood this. In Think and Grow Rich, he emphasized that persistence and desire must often survive long seasons of defeat before they bear fruit. He called it the testing period, and most people quit during that test. They confuse silence with rejection. They abandon their vision because the world isn't clapping yet. But the ones who endure, they become unstoppable because they're not building on popularity. They're building on purpose. Think about how different that is. Popularity fades, purpose compounds. Ask yourself, what have I learned in the silence that I could never have learned in the spotlight? What inner strength has been carved out of waiting, doubting, and staying the course when no one believed in you? These are the muscles that fame can't build. These are the roots that no trend can imitate. When you're overlooked, you either collapse or you cultivate. You either complain or you construct. And if you choose to construct, you become a different kind of person. not louder, stronger. There's a strange paradox here. The world often rewards the loudest voices, but history celebrates the deepest ones. The ones who didn't just chase attention, but carried wisdom. The ones who didn't just show up early, but arrived ready. And readiness is a kind of power we rarely talk about. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic, but it's real, and it only comes through time, through 10,000 quiet decisions, through years of showing up when there's no audience. That's where your foundation is built. Let me tell you something real. If you're in a season where no one sees you, don't waste it. Don't rush through it. Don't curse it. Because the work you do in obscurity is the most honest work you'll ever do. It's not designed to impress. It's designed to transform. And when you finally emerge, when the world finally takes notice, you won't be a performer. You'll be a presence. Because you didn't just survive obscurity. You used it. Remember this, late bloomers don't wait to be chosen. They choose themselves. They decide that their value is not tied to a timeline. They decide that silence is not the enemy, it's the incubator. They stop measuring their worth by other people's metrics. And that's when the shift happens. They begin to create from wholeness, not hunger, and clarity, not comparison. And that's when true impact begins. So if you're in the furnace right now, if you feel forgotten, behind, unseen, don't give up. You're not falling behind, you're building beneath. And when you finally rise, it won't just be your moment, it will be your movement. The myth of missing out, how late bloomers avoid the traps that derail fast risers. We've been sold a myth that if you don't start early, if you don't succeed fast, you've missed the wave. That opportunity is a window that closes before you've even had the chance to find the door. But that's not truth, it's fear dressed as urgency. The myth of missing out is a lie that keeps you chasing instead of building, imitating instead of creating. And here's the irony, while early risers sprint ahead, late bloomers often avoid the very traps that destroy those who make it too soon. Because when you haven't been handed success, you're forced to understand it. And understanding success is more powerful than achieving it. Let's be honest. Fast success can be a curse disguised as a blessing. It gives you the illusion of mastery before you've developed the inner structure to support it. You get praise before you've built principles. You get attention before you've built identity. And without those two things, principles and identity, success becomes a prison. You start living for others. You start managing impressions instead of growing your soul. And before you know it, you're not free, you're performing. Late bloomers have a different path. Because we've been overlooked, we're not chasing attention, we're chasing truth. We don't need to be seen to know we're growing. And in doing so, we escape the hamster wheel of external validation. We're not trying to protect an image, we're trying to become something real. That's why late bloomers often build more sustainable lives. We're not addicted to the applause. We're rooted in authenticity. And when success finally comes, it doesn't own us. It serves us. Napoleon Hill warned against the trap of chasing success without clarity. But he believed in definiteness of purpose, the idea that unless you know why you're pursuing something, the pursuit is hollow. But how do you find that purpose? Not through speed, through stillness. Late bloomers are gifted with that stillness. We're given time to question, to doubt, to wrestle with what the world tells us we should want. And in that wrestling, we find something rare, a vision that's truly ours. Ask yourself, who would I be if I stopped trying to catch up and started tuning in? What would I build if I stopped sprinting towards someone else's finish line and started walking toward my own beginning? These are questions early risers often don't ask. They're too busy managing momentum. But late bloomers, we have to ask them. Because we don't have momentum, we have meaning. And meaning is what turns ordinary lives into extraordinary legacies. There's also another trap that fast success brings: ego inflation. When you're rewarded early, you start to believe the hype. You think you've arrived. But growth doesn't care about hype. It demands humility. Late bloomers are forced to develop that humility. We've faced rejection. We've tasted failure. We've gone unnoticed. And through that, we've learned a kind of resilience that can't be faked. We don't rise with arrogance, we rise with awareness, with gratitude, with perspective. And that makes us dangerous in the best way possible. We also tend to innovate more. Why? Because we're not trapped by the need to maintain a brand. We don't have a reputation to protect, we have a truth to express. And that freedom allows us to take risks, to think differently, to create without fear. That's why so many disruptive thinkers, artists, and entrepreneurs don't flourish until later in life. They've broken free from the myth of missing out. They realize they didn't miss the wave, they are the wave. They've been building it in silence. And when it finally hits, it shifts the entire shoreline. So if you feel like you've missed your moment, think again. You've missed nothing. You've been spared. Spared the traps that seduce the unready. Spared the pressure that crushes the unprepared. Spared the spotlight that blinds those who haven't built eyes strong enough to see truth. You haven't missed out. You've been held back for something higher. The final ascent, why the deepest success comes to those who wait with purpose, there is a kind of success that doesn't explode, it emerges. It doesn't scream, it resonates. It's not built on hype or trend or timing. It's built on truth, and it arrives not in the rush of youth, but in the fullness of time. This is the success of the late bloomer, the one who waited, the one who endured, the one who didn't just want to win, but to deserve the win. And when it finally comes, it's not a peak, it's a platform. Because while the world was chasing moments, the late bloomer was building a mountain. Let's be clear, the final ascent isn't about arriving at the top. It's about knowing what to do once you get there. And fast climbers often reach the summit breathless, disoriented, and unsure of why they climbed in the first place. Late bloomers, though, we show up steady, intentional, focused. We've had time to think, time to clarify, time to become the kind of person who can handle the view without losing our footing. And that's everything. Because success isn't the goal. Sustainability is. But the ability to live at the level you've reached, not just visit it. Napoleon Hill understood this when he wrote about the mastermind and the invisible counselors. He knew that the greatest achievements come not from raw ambition alone, but from accumulated wisdom, spiritual clarity, and mental discipline. These are not the fruits of a fast climb. They are the result of waiting with purpose, and of walking your path with eyes wide open, and of asking hard questions while others chase easy answers. And that's what late bloomers do. We wait well, not passively, not bitterly, but purposefully. So let's ask the hardest question now. What are you really waiting for? Is it permission? Validation? A sign from the world to tell you you're ready? Because here's the truth, the world may never give you that. And maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe the sign you're looking for is the silence itself. The ache. The hunger. The slow burn of a dream that won't die, even when nothing around you seems to confirm it. That's not a signal to stop. That's a signal to begin, to go deeper, to commit harder. You see, late bloomers win not in spite of the wait, but because of it. The wait is where we develop the inner infrastructure to hold what we'll one day carry. And when we finally bloom, we don't just grow, we transform. We don't just succeed, we shift the culture around us. Because we're not just adding noise, we're adding meaning. And meaning is timeless. It doesn't peak. It echoes. Here's the final truth. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be to become who you were designed to become. The clock you're racing against is not real. The pressure you feel to arrive is not truth, it's distraction. Real success doesn't scream, "Hurry up." It whispers, "Stay with it." Because the longer you stay, the deeper you grow. And the deeper you grow, the higher you rise. So stop apologizing for your pace. Stop mourning the years you think you've lost. Nothing is lost. Every delay has been a seed. Every failure a pruning. Every moment in the dark has been preparing you for the light you're about to carry. You didn't miss the train. You are the train. And your destination isn't a place, it's a person. You, fully realized. You, finally aligned. You, rising not in reaction to the world, but in response to your calling. This is not just encouragement. This is a warning to the world. Late bloomers are coming. And we're not here to catch up. We're here to take our place. Not with noise, but with weight. Not with speed, but with substance. And when we arrive, we don't just change the game, we rewrite the rules. Because late bloomers don't lose. We win in the end.